The Ride Home by M.J. Pope. I looked down at my phone, walking briskly. 9:05 p.m. The numbers flashed onto the screen. Good, I thought. I can still make it. The next bus after the 9:18 wasn't for another hour, and I wasn't keen on waiting that long. I still had to get up early next morning. Pushing open the university's glass doors, I walked out into the cool evening air and took a deep breath of satisfaction. It had been a hot day, and the room we had managed to schedule for our club had a bad AC, making for a rather uncomfortable RPG experience. We still managed to have fun. It's easy to ignore something as mundane as the heat when there are adventures to be had and monsters to slay, even if it was all in our heads. My eyes strayed to the highway past the university's main drive, with all its lazy cars gliding along, headlights glaring. The coast was clear at least, and the bus wasn't coming early. Either way, I was glad I wouldn't have to run all the way to the stop with all the stuff I was lugging around, including a sizable shoulder bag containing my RPG supplies, and my backpack with all its daily essentials. With a sigh of relief, I shifted my rifle's strap and continued walking at an easier pace, glad that there was no need to hurry. The weight of the bag and the familiar heft of my gun dug uncomfortably into my right shoulder, and I briefly considered switching them to the other side. But it was too much of a hassle, so I simply soldiered on. The stop was empty when I arrived. Most people didn't stay this late at the university anyways, so I wasn't too surprised. But it's still uncomfortable to wait for the bus alone, especially in the twilight hours, when it's so hard to see clearly. Out of habit, I swung the rifle off my shoulder and chambered around from the magazine, resting my finger on the safety switch. Always better safe than sorry. After taking a careful look around, I loosened up the cap on my head, moving the brim so I could better see the sky. The sun was almost done setting, and all around the horizon was a pale blue, glowing above dark clouds and the shadowy silhouettes of the mountains. I had seen the sunset through the window earlier, in the clubroom, but I didn't have time to fully appreciate the sky with the game going on. It was spectacular. I was standing there, thinking about clouds and light and sunsets, as the next guy walked up to the stop. He walked with a slight limp, and he carried a Kalashnikov-style assault rifle over his shoulder, which he carried proudly, holding onto the strap and standing up straight as he could, as if to show it off. I thought that maybe it was new. Most people carried their firearms with a sort of casual neglect, completely accustomed to their presence. "Hey," I said politely with a small smile. I didn't normally greet random people, but to be honest, I was glad of the company. He nodded back and said something like, "How's it going?" in that way people do when not really expecting an answer. "That's a cool gun you got there, man. Real old school." A friendly smile spread across his face. "Hey, thanks. It's made to look and feel just like the antiques. I'm with the Arms Club here at the school." He swung it off his shoulder enthusiastically and extended it so I could take a look. It really was heavy, not like lots of the newer, lighter guns that people tended to carry for convenience, but solid, probably with real wood furnishings. "Cool, man. That's a neat one," I said, half hoping that the conversation would end there. I was never much of a gun person. "It'll put a pretty hole in a shade, too," he bragged as I handed it back to him. "They just don't make 'em like they used to, you know? That's why we try to recreate them in our club. And this one turned out great." He looked over at my own rifle with interest. "Yours looks kind of like an old one too, huh?" I shrugged. "Yeah, it's an old D90, a war original. Though I got it chambered in a higher caliber, and it's got burst settings and all that." He nodded and said something like, "Nice, man," before turning half away and going quiet, probably sensing the end of the conversation and my disinterest in the topic. We stood there in mutual silence, the last words of our little talk hanging between us like a sort of awkward handshake of mutual acceptance. I could tell he wanted to talk more about the Arms Club, probably would have invited me too if I had shown more interest. But I already had my own club, and that was more my speed anyways. It wasn't too long until the 8:30 route bus arrived, and, thankfully, we had waited without incident. I wasn't keen on a shade rush when we were just the two of us, but he was probably a decent marksman anyways. The guard hopped out and brushed past us casually to check the surroundings as we boarded the bus behind him. I showed the driver, a tired-looking man with a scraggly gray beard, my transfer ticket, to which he just nodded his approval. I took a seat near my nameless friend from the Arms Club, one of those spots in the back where the seats face to the side, so you can have plenty of legroom, not to mention space for all my stuff on the seats next to me. We didn't say anything else to each other, but I thought it fitting to sit there since we had at least shared some friendly words. The bus wasn't crowded, as expected at this late hour, just a small scattering of people taking up solitary seats and minding their business. I tried looking out the window across from me, but the light from inside the bus made it more like a mirror than a window. My phone was running low on battery, and I didn't want it to run out, since it was having trouble turning on or charging. Damn old thing. So I just sat there, staring at my own reflection in the window to avoid looking at the other people too much. Didn't want to look like a creep either. With that, my mind began to wander, as it normally does when there's nothing to do, thinking about today and tomorrow and other random things about life. I had to make sure not to get too lost in thought, though. I've missed my stop that way more than once. People got on and off the bus now and again, and I would look over briefly at them out of curiosity. One guy got on with a large pizza box supported in one hand and a large revolver held in the other, looking very grateful to be on the bus after what was probably a rather nervous wait. Understandable. I wouldn't want to have to leave a pizza behind either. A little while after, another woman boarded, and oddly enough, she didn't seem to be carrying any visible weapon. I wouldn't normally have noticed, but my conversation earlier had me wondering what kind of gun everyone was carrying. She probably had some sort of compact firearm in her purse, a bold choice when traveling at evening. Then there came a loud bump, and the whole bus shook for a moment, as if we had hit a speed bump going too fast. My heart began to beat a little faster, and I looked around, curious as to the cause. I heard my acquaintance from earlier mumble something along the lines of, "Oh God, what was that?" But there were no answers forthcoming. I tried to look out behind the bus through the window, with little success. The driver continued on as if nothing had happened, so I figured that all was well, and began to relax. If that was all that happened tonight, then we were doing great, and I'd get home with time to spare. But no, things don't always go as smooth as I'd like. Almost never do. Someone pulled the stop signal to get off, and the vehicle rolled to a stop by a small covered bench in front of a vacant lot and a few old houses. The door opened, but the guard held up a quick hand as the man moved to exit. He stepped down and looked around. "Shades gathering," he said tiredly. "You gotta get off here?" The passenger, a 30-something man with thinning hair and a modern-looking bullpup gun, sighed. "Yep, next stop is a little too far away." The guard shrugged and came back up the steps. "Nah, no problem. I think we have enough here." He grabbed a PA speaker to address everyone. "Shade rest, folks. Please close the windows and attend the gun slits. If you are short on ammunition, please check the boxes beneath the seats for your caliber. If there isn't any or there isn't enough, please take a quick look around and politely ask your fellow passengers for assistance. Thanks for riding with us tonight, and we should be back on the road quickly." To this familiar speech there were a few looks of annoyance as everyone began to ready their weapons and set out extra munitions on the seats. I thought with some irritation of my dying phone and the delay this could cause, especially if the bus was damaged in the rush. But I tiredly crossed over to kneel on the seat in front of me and opened the gun slit before readying my weapon, making a mental note to buy some more bullets next time I went shopping. I gave a brief nod to the guy from before as he took up position next to me. "Looks like we're in for the long haul, huh?" "Yup." As the lights dimmed and I got a good look outside, I felt the accustomed rhythm of my heart beating faster as adrenaline takes hold. Already I could see the grotesque shapes of shades forming in the darkest corners of the lot and yards in front of us. After making sure all sides of the bus were properly covered, the guard readied the heavy machine gun mounted to the roof in the lookout turret. "Stay safe and shoot straight, everyone." Before the rush began in earnest, I stole a quick glance over at the woman, who I had seen without a gun earlier. Turns out she did have a small submachine gun in her purse, a common design for dealing with the occasional daytime shade. Good thing she had everyone else with her. The shades were almost fully formed now. Just before they rushed, I leaned over to my new friend. "Hey look, that one looks like a Pokemon," I said jokingly, pointing to one that was roughly Gengar-shaped. He laughed. Gotta shoot 'em all, huh? With that, the firing began. I had forgotten to put in earplugs, and the sound was deafening. Flipping to 3-round burst, I began to mow shades as they rose dripping from the ground. It was an odd symphony of sound, the noise of all the different calibers as they tore through the frenzied attackers. The shades dissolved like smoke as soon as they were sufficiently torn apart, but I knew how the claws and hooks of their various appendages would rip through metal and flesh all the same, and I began to repress old memories as a force of habit. Wave after wave they came, some silent, some moaning or screeching like banshees. It was a bigger rush than I had seen in a while, and I had to reload several times before it began to subside. The roar of the bus guard's HMG finally died down when it was all over, and when, for several minutes, no new shades had arrived, we all allowed ourselves to breathe easy at last. The reinforced sides of the bus had been scored savagely, as there had been a few close calls, but I was just glad that it was over. The guard bid farewell to our departing passenger, who hurried on his way home with his gun ready, just in case. Luckily, we didn't have any more rushes on the trip home. My friend got off some time before me, departing with a nod and another friendly smile. I briefly wondered whether I'd see him again. Not very likely, unless I decided to try out his club. But again, I was never really interested in guns, just as long as they shoot straight and get me home in one piece. I was surprised to see the pizza guy get off at my stop as well, and he went the other direction after politely thanking the guard and driver. It was full twilight now, the sun almost completely sunk beneath the horizon. The air was cool and fresh, and I took a deep breath before walking off at a brisk pace, since my phone was now at 2% battery. It had been a good day.